Okay, very happy to be joined by the main man, a man that has been somewhat of a regular guest on Violent Money over the last couple of years. Of course, the Cage Warriors lightweight champion, and he will be in action defending that title, Cage Warriors 184, against Lucas Clay, George Hardwick. Hello, my friend, we meet again.
Hello, how's it going?
Yeah, good, good. How you doing, man? Just as we said before, a couple of weeks out from the fight. How have things been going for this one?
Feeling super sharp in training. Just had myself, it was like a garlic buckwheat flatbread with big mushrooms and some leftover chili con carne and beans on it. So either I'm going to be really energetic when I spar tonight, or I'm going to be farting a lot, or both. They often go hand in hand.
I mean, either way, probably not going to be good for Harry, right?
It's not good for Harry anyway.
Of course, of course. I'll touch on that first, actually, because I mean, obviously, he's fighting just a week after you. Is it beneficial, do you think, for you guys to kind of be peaking around the same time, or is it a case of maybe you're so focused on your stuff, he's so focused on his stuff that you're maybe not able to help each other as much as you normally would?
Well, we fought on the same card before multiple times at amateur. We've never done this close for a title fight because it's a little bit more on the resources, a little bit more on the training volume when you're training for a 5 round title fight versus a 3 round fight that was on the prelims or an amateur fight. So obviously there might be some logistical, I wouldn't say headaches, but some logistical things to work around on my fight week so he can still get his training done and not overexert himself because you can very easily overexert yourself cornering for someone else. If you're out of camp in fat boy mode, eating everything from the hotel breakfast, it's not an issue. But if you've got one more week and then you're defending the title yourself, there's a few things we'll work around. But it's just an exciting time. It's going to be such a furious 7 days that I can't wait for it.
Of course, of course. Obviously, this is the second time you've been booked against Lucas Clay. March of last year, it was supposed to happen, so basically a year later. Obviously, he's not fought in Cage Warriors before, so when you picked up that injury last year and the fight didn't happen, did you maybe think that, oh, we're not going to get that one? And if so, what was the thought process when that name got brought to you again this time?
See, obviously on that injury, there was a lot I thought, will I be able to do this again? Will I be able to do that again? I was sat in the hospital for 3, 4 days waiting for the surgery. I didn't just go in on the Tuesday and get the surgery then. Went in
Yeah,
Tuesday morning, got the surgery Friday night. There was a lot of uncertainty in that whole period. And then in the recovery, some people they have to get bone grafts after because it just sets wrong or there's been issues in surgery. And luckily, everything's been perfect with me. It was good to get that fight with Yoga because he was so tough. I could get the 5 rounds, even though it was disappointing not to get the finish. That was like the first stage of the comeback, getting back in the win column. This is part two, making this fight happen that didn't get to happen in the first place. And to be honest, nothing really changes of it, but I am glad, you know, he lost that opportunity to fight for the belt last year through no issue by himself. So I'm glad to make it right to him, even though it's just going to be him getting smashed.
what are your thoughts on him? And I guess, has it been easier to prepare for this one, given a lot of his fights have been in LFA compared to maybe Iorga, who, like, you're looking at sort of the depth of the regional scene there, with the availability of footage and things like that. Has this one a bit easier to prepare for?
See, you can find the footage. I found plenty for Yoga, but I'm not
Nice.
the guy who sits and obsesses over every little minutia of footage because I've done that before. I've done that in amateur fights where I'm like, I shouldn't take this guy down. One of my amateur losses, I shouldn't take this guy down. And then it was a tough fight, back and forth clinch, lost the decision, but it was the third round I took him down, and that was the best round of the fight for me. Doing the opposite. Salwadi, I thought I shouldn't grapple with him. I shouldn't mix it up too much. I should sprawl him and box him. And then he fought differently. So I've done it before. I've gotten too deep into footage and what I should do here and what I should do there. I see enough. You get it, the readings enough, and then it's Harry and Abdul and Peter Irving. These guys feed me what I need to see.
Yeah. So from what have you seen, where do you kind of think of him on a skill perspective. Obviously, he's an experienced guy. He's had a lot of fights in LFA, which is it's almost the Cage Warriors equivalent in the US in terms of the amount of guys they're sending to the UFC. So where do you kind of think he is on that perspective?
He's a skilled guy, but his game's less about shutting other people down. It's more about finding his opportunities, which can be easier in some regards, but more dangerous in others. Because his striking, it doesn't all come together with all these different systems. He's throwing up side kicks and throwing up wheel kicks. In one regard, it's less threatening. In the other regard, it can be more threatening. You have to mind for these unorthodox techniques. It's kind of similar on the grappling. He looks like some of his striking, he's tried to learn it through Batman Arkham City, but I've played more Batman Arkham Asylum, Arkham City than anyone. Got platinum on both.
Um, and of course, it's another fight for you that is against a guy that isn't from Cage Warriors. It's been a bit of a trend. You fought Chris Bongard, but other than that, it's all been guys coming from outside the organization. Why do you think that is, and how do you feel about that? Because there are good lightweights in Cage Warriors. I know James Power has called you out, which is funny because I know you guys have trained together a lot as well. But he wants that fight with you. But why do you think it is that you keep getting these, for lack of a better term, outsiders coming in?
Um, to be honest, I don't know. Ian Dean gives me the name. You can ask myself. Whenever I get given a name, I say yes. I've never asked for another opponent or asked to fight this guy or not to fight that guy. Ian Dean gives me a name, and I say yes. So I haven't gone too deep into it.
All right, that's fair. Um, and obviously with your jaw, we touched on your injury there. You had quite a long layoff with that. You were out about a year. Now, obviously, you fought back in September. You're getting this one in March. How much of it's still 6 months, so I know in an ideal world you'd like to be more active than that, but how much of a relief is it for you to get back in there early in 2025 after having
it
that year off?
it's absolutely dream come true, perfect. Because over those 2 years, I got a knockout title defense. I got the Contender Series loss, and I got a 5 round title defense against Christian Yorga. So 2-1, not bad, but it just feels like even though so many experiences were accumulated, so many good people have come into my life, and so much good developments have been made technically that have not even shown slightly yet. There was a bit of ring rust in that last fight, but I haven't even shown a lot of the developments, even to a slight degree yet. And I can't wait to show them. But it still feels like I just wasted 2 years of my life. 26-year-old moving towards a prime, and obviously, no, I fought my own injury, whatever. But it just feels low output, and I was priding myself on my way up to winning the title, and then once I won the title, I was priding myself on activity, defending regularly, defending more regularly than pretty much anyone, and it was a bit of a knock, even to have 2 wins, 1 loss, but over the space of 2 years, it feels like you're wasting time. Time is very finite, so I want to get like 3, 4 fights in. I want to fight here. If there's another fight event in Newcastle, another Cage Warriors event, I'm jealous of Harry. Harry's got 2 title fights in Newcastle, and the energy has just been unmatched. The best energies that I've felt at Cage Warriors events have been in Newcastle. I would really want that, and I really want the redemption on Contender Series. But first things first, I've got to fight Mr. Casual Clay.
That's a good nickname. I like that. Obviously, you mentioned Harry on Newcastle there. You're fighting on Unplugged, and you've done the Unplugged deal before. How do you feel about that environment?
So these kind of environments, unplugged, plenty of fights during COVID. I fought in Bellator. That was just a
Yeah.
huge arena in Milan that was empty. I fought in York Hall and Cage Warriors Trilogy when it was empty. It doesn't make any difference to me. I do like the sound of the shots in those environments.
Hmm.
When you land a leg kick, when you land a body shot, there's a different dopamine hitting your brain when you land those shots. There's different things you perceive. Obviously, I love the energy of the crowd, and I really want that on a Newcastle show at some point. But there's something about it when you can hear the rhythm of the guys breathing a lot more. You can hear the other guy's corner a lot more and shut them down. You can kind of preempt what he's doing because you hear their corner. There's so many little facets to it when it's just that bit more intimate. And I've got plenty of experience with it.
Yeah. You mentioned obviously the Contender Series right there. Um, I'm sure that's a fight you're pretty fed up talking about at this point, but in the sense that you've had two fights since then, the improvements you've made even since then have been pretty evident. Do you feel like you're getting closer to an opportunity like that again?
Yeah, just take, because of the stacked nature of lightweight, featherweight, these like premier divisions, it's either very late notice or contender series, seemingly, to get into the UFC. But even if I was offered something late notice, I'd obviously take it. But my brain, even when I was in hospital waiting for a jaw surgery, I still there's a bit of me in the apex. I want to right that wrong, and
Mm.
if I could go through the same process and then produce the result, because I've learned so much since then, that's the dream. The dream is almost more the redemption at this point.
Um, how close do you feel to potentially doing that? Do you feel like this year, or are you looking at maybe next year, or where are you at? Because
This
obviously
year,
you picked up two wins in that, and then obviously if we get a win here, it's a third win. It probably lines up for the summer.
it would be perfect timing for me. Obviously, I'm not the one at the top calling the shots, but they start matching it. They start in August, September. They start matching it around June, July.
Yeah.
I'm terrible with months of the year, so I've probably done some kind of T to autism here. But they match it around the area. I want to get two fights in and then be ready for any call. And then it's just saying yes to it.
Um, Away from the cage, it was so slightly after your last fight, yourself and Harry got to take the boat down to the Riverside for a Middlesbrough game. I know you're maybe not the most hardcore football fan from what we've talked about before, but what was that experience like for you?
Oh yeah, it was unreal experience. I was heavily, heavily into football when I was a kid. Much more so. That was, everyone goes through that phase. Loved Mark Schwarzer. Was really into like goalkeepers and what have you back in the day. Mark Schwarzer was a hero, old legend, Borough goalkeeper. But yeah, it's just buzzing the energy at football events, um, and going through all these different parts and going on the pitch. It's just a sick experience. And it's the thing with Middlesbrough Football Club. When Middlesbrough Football Club does well, Middlesbrough does well. When one does well, we all do well.
Yeah, I'm from Norwich. It's very much similar in terms of when the club is up, everyone's up. It's very much a similar feeling there.
Yeah, I remember.
And
Speaking of nostalgia, I remember when Middlesbrough were 4-1 up against Norwich,
oh yes,
and then
I was at that game.
conceded
I would have been at that game.
conceded 3 goals at 5 minutes. 5 minutes left, and then Bernie Slaven, who was commentating for the Middlesbrough radio, just goes out in a huff.
I need
That's
to find the
burnt.
Middlesbrough. I need to find the Middlesbrough commentary for that. Then I've heard the Norwich commentary several times.
That's burnt into my brain.
I mean, and one of the pictures I saw, you were with the statue of George Hardwick, who's like a Middlesbrough legend. Is that a relation to you, or
Possibly. I know we're related to a George Hardwick who was a miner who lost an eyeball in a mining accident, but
okay?
I'm not sure about the footballer. Uh,
Okay.
I'm not the biggest ancestry guy.
Yeah, and now of course you guys now have the Middlesbrough inspired walkout shirts, which is really cool as well.
Yeah, Harry was the one who thought, let's have some designs similar. I'm going to try and get a design kind of similar to an old school Mark Schwarzer goalkeeping top. Maybe not the long sleeve, but something similar along that.
Yeah. Away from that, one of my favorite parts of sort of culture and society in the last couple of years has been the resurgence of Creed.
Yes.
And we all saw your walkout at the last show. Obviously, I led into the interview with the opening line from My Sacrifice, but we saw you walk out to My Sacrifice, and it was just perfect. Yourself and Harry just both singing along. It was just really cool. Um, yeah, you switched up from Pat Benatar to Creed in that last fight, and I don't know what to say. It's just a great song. But is the plan to stick with that, or are we going back to Heartbreaker for this one?
I'm not 100% decided. Obviously, My Sacrifice was the perfect song for that entrance.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
You're coming back, and all the things it talks about, life changing in an instant. It just felt right, and I'd made that walkout a million times listening to that song in my head before I even made that walkout. This time, I'm not as sure. There's a few contenders. They're heavily thinking about Judgment from Yakuza 0. No one will get it, but it's an unplugged, so it'll be a quieter event. No one has to get it. It's not like last time where Harry entered to gold and everyone could sing along. No one has to sing along to a Yakuza karaoke song. But there is a bit of me wants to go back to the Heartbreaker, Pat Benatar. But I'd probably do a slowed and reverb version. See if that's about.
Yeah, have a look on YouTube to see if that exists.
I'm sure it will.
Yeah, make one up if not. Yeah, and we couldn't have you on and not talk about some Japanese kickboxing. Last time we spoke, you announced yourself as a Masaki Noiri fan. Last time we talked, obviously people see the content on your YouTube channel as well. Um, been a rocky start for Noiri in one, but he got that big win in his last fight, and now he's got a really big fight coming up. What are you making of his move to one so far?
See, stylistically, City Chai is a very difficult matchup. Like, because someone long with really good defense who can get up on the points like City Chai. And City Chai is a kickboxing all timer that people don't
Yeah.
give the credit to because he didn't have his explosion of success at the same time as the one championship Muay Thai explosion. People don't give him the same credit that people give a Rod Tang, but I would say City Chai is much more accomplished than a Rod Tang. He ran through glory multiple times, got robbed out of the decision against Van Roosmalen, and pretty much had to win the belt multiple times, and then defended it some ridiculous amount of time. Murat Grigorian, it was his fifth fight against Sitchai where he finally managed to scrape a decision on him. Sitchai is an unbelievably skilled fighter, and someone with that length and defensive ability, it's difficult for someone like Noiri to work against, who's especially only in 3-3s. You see Yuki Yoza, a kind of similar fighter, but more varied, has made a lot more adjustments against fighting the southpaw. The Chinese guy that Noiri fought in the second fight, if you get caught early, someone's that physical, it makes it a difficult fight. You get caught with a knockdown early in kickboxing, you've got a mountain to overcome. But this Tawanchai fight, it's very interesting. He can do it. I'd lean towards Tawanchai. I think his distance, his teeps, he's going to be difficult to keep in one place. Masaki likes to get people tired and keep them in one place, especially if the fight ends up in a cage. I'm not sure if it's a cage or a ring, but if it's in a cage, it's going to be really difficult for Noiri. But glad he's finally got that win in one championship. I just hope Chingiz Alazov can break free because he's been shelved for how long, and he's the best kickboxer on the planet.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll be a ring. It's a very heavily Muay Thai and kickboxing card.
Yeah, but sometimes they'll have one MMA fight and it's in a cage. Sometimes they'll have one kickboxing fight and 20 MMA fights and it's in a ring. It doesn't always work in the most logical way.
And obviously, you mentioned Rodtang there, the main event. Rodtang and Takaru, huge anticipated fight. They've got Saitama Super Arena for it. That should tell you everything. How do you see that one going?
It's kind of, they're both that wild and unpredictable that it's hard to make a leaning anyway because they are going to eat punches and throw punches back. My heart says Takeru. He's going to have to get through some low kicks and deal with low kicks a little bit better than he has done. I know Rodtang doesn't set them up as trickily as Superlek. Superlek has a lot more feinting hand, has a more dexterous right leg. But let's say Takeru. Feel like he's more locked in at this point in his career, from compared to the stories you hear of Rodtang only training however much.
That sounds fair. And you mentioned Yuki Yoza there. He's kind of been that next name that's kind of linked to make that jump over to one. He wants that John Haggerty fight. What are your thoughts on him potentially going over there too?
Well, I hope they just give him plenty of fights and he doesn't get shelved. But
Yeah.
I would imagine they do. You know, I'm trying to think of people he could fight in K1. It's a short list, so the move to one would be more interesting as a spectator. I think he'd probably do better. He'd do better in one than maybe Takeru's done or Masaki's done. Really, really like Yuki Yosa.
Got a bit of a quick fire segment here for you. We know the answer to some of these already, but for the purposes of making it into a reel, I will just ask them anyway. So we'll start with favorite food. I know where you're going to go with this.
Parmo, obviously. The Manjaro's Parmo. I'm really liking the garlic mushroom one. I was all about the bolognese, spicy bolognese covered in garlic and sizzler sauce, the spicy sizzler sauce, Manjaro sauce for ages. But I've kind of the garlic mushroom one's grown on me. I like how there's garlic butter kind of in with the cheese. It makes the texture so good. And obviously, I add more garlic on top of it. At the minute, I've been whamming pancakes pretty much every day. Protein pancakes, and then I've like cheap pancakes on the weekend. But you can get insane macros and have so much variation with a pancake.
Favorite drink?
Favorite drink?
Yeah.
Probably coffee from off the ground. I don't know which. I like a big Americano. I've been liking them with oat milk at the minute. I feel like it.
Mm.
I don't know. It goes with the coffee flavors a little bit better. There's a little bit of normal milk can have a little bit of a binding and doesn't have the it's a better mouthfeel, especially on a latte or a flat white. But it can ever so slightly mask coffee flavors a little bit more than oat milk. It'd be some kind of coffee, Americano, let's say.
What's your go-to breakfast?
Go to breakfast. At the minute, I'm making mug cakes. So this morning, I had it's like 30 grams of ready break, scoop of protein powder, 2 eggs, a few scoops of skyr. I'll put some baking powder and baking soda in it so it rises up, and maybe a small amount of peanut butter in and some blueberries. Get about 450 calories and 30, 40 grams of protein. Yeah, go to breakfast at the minute is protein mug cake.
Favorite movie?
Ooh, shortlist. The first one my brain said was Train to Busan. It's probably Train to Busan or Terminator 2.
Yeah. Favorite TV show?
Probably all time, Yan Can Cook. Have you ever seen it? It's a guy. He had this TV show in America, and he's just doing Chinese recipes. He'd like chop up garlic really quick and go done, and the crowd would give an applause to him chopping an onion because he'd chop it so fast. Probably Yan Can Cook or Fast Food My Way by Jacques Papin.
Favorite musician?
At the minute, Akira Jimbo, who was the drummer in a Japanese jazz fusion band called Cassiopeia.
That's the most George Hardwick answer I've ever heard.
You got to
Favorite
listen to
sport?
Hip Pocket or Gently. Amazing songs.
Favorite sport other than MMA?
Mm, I do like the training stuff that people do in gymnastics, but I don't like to watch it. Yeah, probably the stuff in gymnastics. If we're not allowing any other combat sport,
You can take kickboxing. It's fine.
yeah, it'd probably be kickboxing or freestyle wrestling.
Yeah. Favorite fight. So we'll do one of yours and then a favorite fight to watch.
I'll go favorite fight to watch first. Fights. There's 2 fights in particular. It's going to be hard to choose between them. Frankie Edgar versus Gray Maynard 2. That's an amazing fight. Ends in a draw, but the amazing comeback and all the takedowns that really sticks in my brain, especially because I was so young watching it. It's like films you watch and games you play when you're younger and books you read. They stick in your mind a little bit longer because that was so early into watching MMA. It sticks in my mind a lot longer. And Nick Diaz versus Paul Daly. I remember watching it in the loft, swearing so much that my mum storms up from the end of the garden and shouts, "Stop swearing." In terms of my own fights, the Driscoll fight was a really good one. Obviously, not the best performance in terms of winning and not taking damage, but I'd either go the Driscoll fight or the Truman fight because me and Harry won on that night.
Favorite fighter.
Favorite fighter, current or all time?
Whatever you want.
Mm, because I don't want to just rattle off names. I'll have to go for the one that just pops into my head straight away. Cain Velasquez.
Favorite submission to practice?
So I like practicing them all. I'll say arm triangle because there's already arm triangles on my amateur record, and that gives the least away.
And funniest person you've met in MMA?
Drunk Artem Lobov. He was pretty funny.
Okay, I need the story.
Well, I'm sure. I can't remember the specifics of it. This was just after me and Harry fought. Harry fought Richie Smullen. I fought Nicola Solli. This was in a closed door event in Italy for Bellator. And he just had a few drinks and he was walking around the place having a daft laugh. I'm sure Harry would remember more specifics, but that just sticks out in my brain.
Okay, I will have to speak to Harry about that. Best piece of advice you've been given?
Piece of advice. Just keep it simple. Just hit him hard. That's just off of Abdul.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, pretty good advice, to be fair. Yeah, I want to thank you. That wraps it up. I want to thank you for taking the time today, George. Very excited to see you back in there March 14th. Cage Warriors 184 Unplugged, but of course you can watch it on UFC Fight Pass. Yeah, just finally give us the hard sell. When yourself and Lucas Clay step into the cage, what can the people expect?
They can expect a first round knockout every round.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for taking the time today, George. Always a pleasure. Best of luck.
Thank you.